What's going on, you guys? It's Scott from Fly Rides. We are back again today with a very important video. This is a video all about how to choose the right size electric bike for you. Buying an electric bike online can be a little bit daunting because you don't get to see the bike before you buy it in most situations. So it is very important that you know exactly the right size to get. At Fly Rides, we have been shipping bikes nationwide for almost a decade, so we know a thing or two about sizing you up for an electric bike so that you can be happy with your bike long term, and we can also help you find ways to fine-tune the bike just for you. So in this video, we are going to be giving you some general measurements you should be looking for, but we are also going to break down measurements by eMTB or electric mountain bike, road and commuting style bikes, and leisure style bikes as well. So that really should cover all your bases when it comes down to buying an e-bike. These are the main categories that we sell. If you want to skip to a particular section, go ahead and flip to the time codes off to the side of me right now if you are looking for an eMTB, a road commuter, or a leisure bike. But I will say most of this video is going to have some good information overall as well. So if it's your first time or you're just getting into bike sizing or e-bikes, I would recommend watching the whole thing because it's going to be pretty detailed. So with all that said and out of the way, let's start at the very beginning because that is a very good place to start. Hector, take it away.
Hey guys, Hector here, and today we're going to be talking about bike sizes, but the first measurements that we're going to need are your height and your inseam. So typically you should know your height, and if not, you can always measure yourself. So in order to measure your height, you really just need to find a door jamb, put yourself against it, and measure it with a ruler. To measure your inseam, you will need a tailor's tape, something like this, and measure it from the inside of your leg all the way down to the floor, standing up straight. You do want to wear the shoes that you're going to be out riding with to give you a better sense of what your true inseam is. Once you get those two key measurements, there are a few other measurements on the bicycle itself that you need to be aware of. And these are all going to be applicable to any electric mountain bike, an electric road bike, or an electric cruiser bike. The first measurement we need to speak about is the frame. So in the eMTB world, most bike manufacturers are going to offer a small, medium, large, extra large bicycle. However, each frame size is going to be an actual number. So it'll be actual inches or centimeters. The measurement is typically derived from the distance between the bottom bracket to the top of the seat tube. In electric mountain bikes that have mid-drive motors, it typically is the center of the motor spindle, or the axle, if you will, where the crank arm's attached to the motor, to the top of the seat tube. This number is the most frequently used measurement for all bike sizes. The next measurement we're going to be focusing on is the horizontal top tube or the effective top tube length. That measurement is measured between the center of the head tube to the center of the seat post. So that is important because that's pretty much the most effective length of the bicycle itself. The next two measurements we're going to talk about is actually stack and reach. They're pretty similar in the sense that they're measured above the bottom bracket. The bottom bracket stack, or the stack, is measured between the bottom bracket to the top of the head tube, and the reach is measured above the bottom bracket straight across to the stem itself. The last measurement we want to talk about is standover. So standover can be a little controversial because manufacturers haven't gotten a standard of how to measure this standover length. So whether it's above the seat tube, in the middle of the seat tube, at the top of the seat tube, in front of the saddle, there really hasn't been a standard of how this is measured. But it is really close to measuring your inseam. So the measurement of your inseam usually is a good indication to compare it with standover. So those are the 5 measurements that are going to be specific to every bicycle. So let's dive into every type of bicycle, whether it's an eMTB or a road bike, and find out the differences. So let's start off with eMTBs, that is electric mountain bikes. Most major manufacturers are going to have at least 4 options for your frame sizes. That is going to be small, medium, large, and extra large. Generally speaking, a size small frame is suitable for someone who's 5'3" to 5'6". A size medium frame is someone who's 5'6" to 5'10", A size large frame is somewhere from 5'10" to 6'1", and a size extra large is 6'1" and up. Keep in mind, these are generalities, so let's dive in a little bit deeper so we can find out exactly what size frame fits your height.
Hi. I wanted to point out real quick that the best way to use these measurements that Hector is going to talk about is to get them on your existing bike and then compare them with the bike that you are currently looking at. If you do not have a bike, it would be a good idea to try and find one that fits and then get these measurements on that bike so you can compare them with the chart of the bike that you are currently looking at. But if neither of these are an option, then the best way is still to go with the frame size and the standover height and compare your inseam and height. As we have already talked about, you already have that chart. It's the one we just showed you. All right, let's go on.
Starting off with effective or horizontal top tube length, the small sizes are typically going to have a little bit smaller top tube length because you don't want to extend your arms too far. And the larger sizes will be obviously a little bit longer. The reach and stack, so that's going to be two numbers that run hand in hand because it's both measured above the bottom bracket. Bottom bracket is the key area that you want to start off with. While reach is important, it is one of the more variable measurements because you can end up putting a longer stem, a shorter stem, a taller stem, and so that number can change. Finally, standover. So standover is super controversial, mainly because it is not a standardized measurement. So standover, some manufacturers measure it over the bottom bracket. Some manufacturers measure standover right at where the seat collar is. Some other manufacturers measure the standover in the middle of the seat tube, and some measure it somewhere in between there. And again, this is the measurement from the floor all the way up to the top of the top tube. So while this measurement is important, don't let the standover height deter you from getting a bicycle if the standover height is equal to your inseam. One of the biggest myths out there is that you need to have 2 inches of space between the standover and your body. Most manufacturers are going to have a standover height pretty similar to your inseam. So do not let that deter you from purchasing that bicycle at that frame size. Keep in mind that it's all about comfort while you're riding, not just standing over the bicycle. So most manufacturers are making bicycles that are suited for someone who's 5'2" or taller. So just keep that in mind that if you are 5'2" or shorter, I would look for a bicycle that is a size 40 centimeters or smaller. There are very few manufacturers that do make eMTBs out there, like Cube, so just keep that in mind. One other thing to keep in mind is the size of the tires. So many people are saying that if you're a small size rider, or a shorter rider, I should say, not to get a 29er, or if you're a tall rider, that you should never ride on a 27.5. Although that there is an effective 3/4 inch difference of sizing up or down, depending if you're getting a 27.5 or a 29er, ultimately it depends on the tires. So effectively a 29er by 2.1 is actually going to be a smaller circumference, or I should say diameter, than a 27.5 3.0. So just keep that in mind, that it isn't necessarily more important if you're a shorter rider to ride a 27.5 or a taller rider to ride a 29er.
Hey, it's me again. I'm going to be taking over from here on out. Hector is better at eMTBs and better at most things, and now that he's explained them in such great detail, I am going to break down my favorite style of bike, and that is commuting/road bikes.
Oh, you think you're better than me then? Mm-hmm. All right, that's cool.
What do you think I should say? So similar to the eMTB sizing, a good place to start is with small, medium, large. If you're seeing 3 different sizes on there, it's pretty safe to assume that they're going to be a small, a medium, and a large. Now, of course, who that small, medium, large is going to fit is going to vary based on that frame size, which is why they give you those numbers in the first place. So generally speaking, you're going to actually see bigger numbers, so higher numbers for smaller bikes. For instance, on an eMTB, a 40 centimeter would be more of a small, whereas on a commuting bike, a 45 centimeter would be more of a small bike. Of course, we're going to provide you a chart, which I'll pop up probably about right now, and it'll give you an idea roughly of the type of frame size you should be looking at. Some things to note about commuting bikes in general and road bikes, but more about commuting bikes to be honest, because road bikes are a little bit of a different beast. On commuting bikes, there's a lot of bikes that don't have top tubes at all, so that standover is almost going to be a moot point. There's also a lot more adjustability in that reach because a lot of stems are going to be shorter, they're going to be further up, and a lot of them come with adjustable stems in the first place. So if you feel like the reach is way longer than your arms, don't be super concerned because probably there's going to be some adjustability within that stem. So while road bikes and commuting bikes are pretty similar in sizing, road bikes, generally speaking, do offer you a little bit more variability. So there are a lot more sizes. So generally you'll get, as Hector mentioned earlier, a small, a medium, a large, an extra large, sometimes an extra, extra large, and sometimes an extra small on top of that as well. So it's important to remember that with road bikes, you are getting a lot more options. But the good news is all the measurements you already understand because you watched the whole video, I'm sure, also apply here as well. So you've got your stack, your reach, your effective top tube length, your seat post length, and then also that standover height as well. So you're using all those things to really understand. So a really good way to see if the reach and stack is going to be appropriate based on the spec that you are given is to use an existing bike that you own and see if it works. So if someone, let's say you don't have a bike, but if someone in your life does, find a bike that works for you and measure that reach and stack correctly as Hector showed you before, and then you can use it to compare side by side on your road and commuter bike. But all that said, your inseam and your height are going to be the main deciding factors. Similar to on eMTBs, I would not expect to be that 2 inches clear that a lot of people cite for your sizing on the standover. Again, that is more of an acoustic bike situation, and honestly, it's more of an acoustic road bike situation that you're gonna be like 2 inches clear of the top tube. So don't get too hung up on that. Most likely, your inseam is going to match or be slightly higher than that standover height. If you obsess too much about the standover height, you will end up sizing down too much and you're gonna be squished up on that bike like a little bean. Last bikes we're gonna break down for you guys, because it's the last type of bikes we really carry, are bikes that we call leisure bikes. So leisure bikes, essentially kind of beach cruisery style bikes, bikes that keep you kind of upright. Generally speaking, they are going to either be one size or small, medium, and large, extra large. There's not a whole lot of variety in these bikes in terms of the sizing. The good news is that having only one size to choose from, or two sizes to choose from, makes it a lot easier to decide which bike you're going to get because you don't have that many choices. Most of these bikes, in my experience, will come with a small, medium, large designation or a inches designation. So there's usually not centimeters on this style of bike in terms of what we carry. So we'll list a chart right over here. You can pause it if you'd like and decide which bike is going to be best for you. So a common thing, especially if you're used to riding leisure bikes, is you might expect, again, to sit on that saddle and have your feet touching the ground. Most leisure e-bikes are just not designed this way. It's not an optimal pedal position. If you're doing this, you're gonna have your knees way up in your face. So do not expect when you get a leisure e-bike to be sitting on the saddle with your feet flat on the ground. It is probably not going to happen. So again, it's comfort while riding is what you want to focus on. So get that saddle in a comfortable position while you're riding. And we're going to give you a few tips on how to be a little more comfortable while you're riding right now. I hope now that you are feeling like you are confident in picking the right size bike. But as we mentioned, it is not an exact science. A lot of manufacturers measure different measurements from different points. There are a lot of things to consider. So let's talk now about ways you can fine-tune your ride specifically for you. Sometimes you'll get your bike and you'll be like, this thing isn't working at all. But that is usually not the case if you have followed our instruction and our charts. So let's talk about how we can fix some common issues. So one of the most frequently heard things that we hear is that people feel like they are over the handlebars too much and it's kind of starting to hurt their back. Their riding position feels just like it's a little bit too aggressive. This one is a pretty easy fix, whether it's an eMTB, a leisure bike, or a road commuter. Basically, all you need to do, try switching out your grips. There's a lot of bar end grips that are gonna offer you different riding positions for when you get a little bit too stagnant in one. And you could also consider an adjustable stem, a shorter stem, or a stem that takes the handlebars up a little bit and closer to your body so that you're in a more upright position. Another thing that is pretty common to hear is people's knees hurting while they are riding. This is a pretty common complaint, especially with newer riders, because newer riders like to tend to be lower on the saddle, which means their legs are not getting the full extension that they should. You do not want your legs to be overbent, and they shouldn't feel like they're coming up into your face too much either. Basically, at full extension, you want about 85% extension. So not completely straight legs, but you do want about 85% bend in your knee there. Another thing that we hear a lot is people sliding off the saddle. So they feel like they're just sloping down off the saddle and they can't stay on the saddle comfortably. All you need to do here is to reposition that saddle so it's a little bit flatter, a little bit further back. There really shouldn't be any forward movement within that saddle. It should be perfectly flat, and that will help you stay on the saddle if the bike is properly sized. The last thing we hear quite a bit is that your hips are moving as you pedal. You don't want this because it can cause hip problems, it's less efficient, and it's just not a comfortable way to ride. What this means typically is that your saddle is too high and you just need to lower it a little bit. Again, shooting for that 85% extension. So I hope now you are feeling confident when you are buying a bike online that you are getting the correct size. Do not forget to reference the charts that we have made for you, and they should be pretty comprehensive in terms of the sizes of e-bikes that we carry. Thanks for watching, you guys. We'll see you next time.